was an idea in 1997, just a student who was given a class assignment. He came with this really creative idea of how can we solve the landmine problem in resource-poor areas of the world like Africa. His crazy idea was, let's train rats to do this, giant rats. They're too light to set off the mines, but they have a really powerful sense of smell. To date, our rats have found 169,000 explosive remnants of war. They've cleared an area 122 million square meters. Since I've joined, we've expanded now even further. We have rats in training to perform search and rescue when people are trapped in collapsed buildings following natural disasters. We have rats in training to detect illegally smuggled wildlife products. We've done some studies with the rats to see that they can detect different sorts of contamination in soil.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the founder of the mothership of this podcast called the Goodness Exchange. What's happening at the Goodness Exchange is easy access to this enormous wave of goodness and progress happening in the world that we're not hearing enough about. We have an amazing guest, Dr. Cindy Fast. Dr. Fast is a behavioral neuroscientist with some serious credentials. She holds a PhD in psychology with a specialization in behavioral neuroscience from UCLA. And then she completed a postdoc at Rutgers University to dive even deeper. And what is she doing with all that brain power? Well, she is a part of an organization called APOPO. The organization she works for is training these giant African pouch rats to detect tuberculosis in a fraction of a time that normal testing for TB would happen. They are clearing entire countries of landmines. And there's two other amazing developments since we last interviewed Dr. Fast. I think it would be a spoiler alert if I told you about those mind-blowing developments. So I'm not even going to get there. If you've got a kind of a creepy sense to hear anything about rats, you're going to have that vision of possibility completely transformed by this episode. Stay with us. I think you'll go away like I do every time I talk to Dr. Fast, thinking that anything is possible, especially when we partner with nature, not act against it. So, welcome, Dr. Cindy Fast. I am so excited to talk to you again.
Thank you for having me, Linda. I'm just really honored to be back.
Well, I could not believe when I looked at my emails and it was September of 2022 when we last spoke. That's, in 2 more months, that'll be 3 years.
It's super cliche to say that time flies, but it really feels like it has been. It's like rocket propelled.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to circle back to you is, A, you're one of my very favorite projects I've ever promoted and gotten behind and, want to shine a light on, because what you're doing demonstrates so much about the world and how much we don't know is going on. And it's also about this whole other world of knowledge, in your case, coming from other creatures that we share the planet with, and experience that we can tap into as the world moves on from whatever troubles we have right now. And we will move on. But moving on is what we want to talk about, because I cannot believe how much progress your organization has had in the 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, getting ready to chat with you, I had to actually go back and watch the previous chat that we had, and it just really kind of dumbfounded me how much has changed, and all of those visions and goals that we have, how much further along and beyond that we are now.
It's awesome. It's just awesome. And that's another thing that right at the outset here, I want to remind people, because that's really what this podcast is all about. It's about celebrating what's right with the world. And that's not that there aren't a gazillion things wrong, but everybody else is covering that really well. And it's not what I do. What we're doing here is looking at all the good and all the good people and the ingenious people and saying, hey, all that bad is happening, but this is happening too, and giving people reason to know that progress is happening despite what we hear in the negative noise on the news and stuff. So one of the things that I wanted to start right off with is, like, just to remind people how fast things can go with a really good idea, good leadership, and just things that make sense, practical sense. Give us a tiny history of APOPO and, where you fit into that. Just as brief as you could, because I can't wait to tell people about the stories of what you guys are doing.
So it was an idea in 1997, just a student who was given a class assignment. He came with this really creative idea of, how can we solve the landmine problem in resource poor areas of the world like Africa? And his crazy idea was, let's train rats to do this, giant rats. They're too light to set off the mines, but they have a really powerful sense of smell. So then the research started to see if it was possible. And then from there, we started actually working in Minefields. We expanded to other areas like the health sector, realizing that the rats can use their noses in other powerful ways to help people on the planet. So I joined here at our training and research headquarters in Tanzania in 2016. So since I've joined, we've expanded now even further. We have rats in training to perform search and rescue when people are trapped in collapsed buildings following natural disasters. We have rats in training to detect illegally smuggled wildlife products. We've done some studies with the rats to see that they can detect different sorts of contamination in soil. And we've expanded and scaled. So I think when we last spoke, our rats were deployed in Tanzania, of course, and Angola and Cambodia. But now the number of rats in those locations has significantly increased. So the impact is just exponentially larger. And we've moved into, like I said, scale new areas. So in Azerbaijan, Ethiopia, we now have rats in Turkey as well.
Now, you just mentioned the word rat about a dozen or 20 times. And most people are going to cringe every time you say that word. Like, I hope in the introduction I gave people enough context so that they understand this is a particular kind of rat that grows extra large in Africa and that has a disposition to be trainable and live a productive, helpful life right side by side with humans, right? It's not like the rats that we see in New York City in the subway, right?
No, believe it or not, our rats are even bigger. They are giant. They're about the size of a small cat, but as you said, Linda, they really have these great personalities. They're very curious. They're socialized from the time that they're babies, so they're really comfortable around people. For me, I really do kind of view them as of course, I view them as colleagues because we work together side by side. But also I view them as sort of, like a cat or a dog. They're curious. They each have their own personalities. Some of them like to have
Tell
their
us
back
about
scratched.
tell us about the one that does the happy dance.
Tamasha. Tamasha is one of our TV detection rats. She's an up-and-coming superstar. The very first time I saw Tamasha doing some of her advanced training, the trainer placed her into this kind of rectangular chamber where the patient samples are placed. And Tamasha did this little jump and twist and jump and twist. And I was nervous. I said, what is wrong with her? What is going on? Is she sick? What's happening? And the trainer looked at me and he's like, you haven't seen her happy dance? This is what Tamasha does every time she comes in to work and evaluate patient samples. She gets so excited to play this game of where is the TB hiding so that she can get a little banana avocado smoothie morsel treat. And then when she's done, so she works super quick. She's super accurate. She can sniff or evaluate about 100 patient samples in about 8 minutes is her average right now. She is lightning fast. And her accuracy is around 90%, so she is quite good. But when she's done, we go to take her out, and she just squeaks in protest. She wants to stay there and keep playing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Now, this is, I'll just jump ahead. This is how I learned about you. People are always asking me how I get my guests for the podcast. Well, I'm a total science nerd and a documentary nerd. And I saw a documentary that was celebrating your work in the Minefields and this TB thing. I think that's all that was happening then. And I want to describe to people, if you don't know how important it is, this TB detection methodology. So let's say there's a village somewhere and TB gets started. Now, first of all, you have to have enough people already sick to call the authorities in to test everyone. And then you got to culture some swabs or something. You test everybody in the whole community. I mean, this whole process would take, what, weeks, months?
Absolutely. I mean, just to grow the culture is going to be a couple of weeks.
Right. And so that's the old way we used to discover. Well, by then, so many people in the community have passed it to each other that it's just a giant disaster for whole families and neighborhoods and everything. Okay. Then enter your rats. What you have them doing, at least you're going to correct me, is there's I saw a plexiglass tube with little holes and little samples all the way down the line. And the rat just goes through and it'll stop at one that has TB. So you instantly can detect. Correct me. Tell me about how that process looks.
No, you've got it absolutely right. So we partner with the local health clinics. The patient will go to that health clinic, with the symptoms that they're presenting with. The health clinic will collect the sample, a sputum sample, which is the phlegm that you cough up from your lungs, especially if you have TB or any other sort of pulmonary disease. We then have a motorcycle courier who drives around and visits all these health clinics, collecting all the samples, brings them back to our lab. We have them heat inactivated, so we autoclave them so they're not contagious anymore. So our rats aren't at risk of getting sick, and neither are our team members. Then we line them up, like you said, and the rat just walks from one end of the apparatus to the other, sniffing each sample. If it's a TB negative patient, the rat rejects it within a few milliseconds, just a single sniff. But if that patient actually has TB, the rat will stop and pause there or hover for about 3 seconds. And some of the rats develop funny little behaviors. Like Kenanisa is one of our current rats. She likes to circle. So it's almost like she's doing a little happy dance as well. Like, I found it, I found it.
Oh, really? Okay, so the difference in a community's health, when you can do, how many did you say a rat can do in an hour or whatever tests?
The average is 100 samples in about 15 minutes.
So compare that to the 2 weeks per sample in a good month that we talked about was the old way.
Even for PCR, right, which would be a newer technology, you have the polymerase chain reaction. I think everybody knows PCR after COVID. You go to take a PCR test, that's going to take about an hour and a half to get your result back. And that PCR machine can only handle around 4 to 8 samples with each test. So you get a big backlog. So even though the test takes an hour and a half, when you have a lot of patients that need to be tested, you have a backlog. And I'm sure we all remember those crazy COVID days where we would go to do our test and we would have to wait until the next day or a few days to get our results back. Where the rats, they can screen it right there in almost real-time results.
Wow. Okay. And the difference that makes, just to finish our thought process here, is that you can get back to the community and those individuals that tested positive before they've spread it to 50 others.
Exactly. So TB is actually a curable disease. It takes a course of antibiotics, but if it's left untreated, as you described, you spread it to others, and it can actually be deadly. Tuberculosis is actually the world's deadliest infectious disease. It kills more people every single day than landmines do in an entire year. So identifying the patient gets them access to life-saving treatment, but it also prevents them from spreading it to others.
Wow. Okay. So that's kind of where this whole thing started, was TB. And tell us a little bit about the landmine application too, because that's to me showing the magic of the mind of another creature. Talk to me about how these giant rats can clear. Well, haven't you cleared Mozambique or some entire country of landmines with the rats?
Yeah, Mozambique was declared mine-free in 2015, I think. And it was in large part because of our rats working there, because the rats are actually just speeding up the process. they're much more efficient than traditional methods. So traditionally, you would go out with a metal detector and you would need to wave that back and forth across every square inch of that hazardous area, the minefield. Well, the problem is there's also a lot of scrap metal in these former conflict zones or these minefields that haven't been touched for decades. So every single ping on that metal detector has to be investigated. And it's a very slow and tedious process. Our rats can search an area about the size of a tennis court in 20 minutes. So what they're doing is they're speeding up how we can search these huge areas and make them safe from mines. So what the rat does, he just walks back and forth between a couple of handlers who are standing in safe zones. He's using his nose to sniff for explosives, so he's ignoring any scrap metal. If he finds the explosives, which are, inside landmines or other unexploded remnants of war, the rat will just scratch at the ground to basically signal to the handler, this is the location where there is something buried. And for that, he gets a banana reward.
And that's that. I mean, then that's not that, right? Then I suppose a proper bomb disposal situation unfolds so that we can remove things safely. Everybody remains safe. Okay.
That's right.
Now, unless you're really hip to the news in Africa, you might not appreciate how much land mass was inaccessible. In Mozambique had a terrible civil war in, I'm not sure, the 90s, late 80s.
I'm not an expert on the history either, but I think it was the late 80s.
Yeah. And so what happens is, all these folks, both sides, start planting landmines all over the place as if there's no tomorrow. And then, of course, there's no maps, there's no documentation. And then you end up with large portions of countries that it's inaccessible to agriculture or children or anything until some system like you're describing comes in and gives people access to their homeland again. So that's just like too good. Okay, so those are the two projects that first got me interested in APOPO. I'm going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about these rats with little backpacks and other cool things that are happening, okay? You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. Okay, we're back with Dr. Cindy Fast from the APOPO Rat Project. What's the actual name so people can look this up?
We're APOPO, APOPO. So we're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to protect people and our planet with scent detection animals, which is the African giant pouched rat.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay, just real quick, give us a little bit more of an idea what a giant African pouched rat is, what it looks like and all that.
So they're like most rodents, they're naturally nocturnal. So they don't have very large eyes or very good vision, but they have large ears. They're kind of a brownish, maybe deer colored fur on their backside, but their belly is a lighter white color. One of our rats named Kairuki actually has white arms, which is unique. Um, they have these very, very long whiskers, which helps them when navigating in the dark so they can feel around because their vision's not very good. But it also helps them with their sense of smell. So when you watch a rat that's sniffing, these really long, gorgeous whiskers are moving back and forth and they're picking up the odor molecules. And as soon as the rat detects a smell that he's looking for, those whiskers start moving in a way that reminds you of a perfumer. So they start moving in a way to bring those molecules right to their nose. So they're really, really sophisticated and adapted to using their sense of smell at night in particular.
What for? Like where's their niche in the environment if they weren't finding TB and landmines?
So that they're naturally in kind of rural areas of sub-Saharan Africa. Where we are at, we're in the foothills of the local mountains, and so there's a lot of agriculture. So there's a lot of these rats around in the wild because they are just master problem solvers when it comes to finding food and hoarding that food. So what they're using their nose for in the wild and is to just to find food and to find mates and to avoid danger. So if they smell a predator.
And the food would be like rats in New York City food or grain or whatever's fruit that falls from trees. What's their normal diet?
They actually have a really diverse diet. When I first learned all of the things that they ate, I was a little jealous that they love avocados and corn and mangoes and watermelon and peanuts and bananas, and peanuts are probably one of their favorites, but also grains. So that's really where they become sort of pests, is because they are closely linked with agriculture or the food markets where they're taking advantage of the abundance of food that's there.
Okay. And then tell us a little bit about the pouch, because I imagine the babies are cute as heck. And you said you're starting them out, habituating them to people. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so the cheek pouches, they're not like a kangaroo. They're not marsupials. They have cheek pouches, so it's very much like a chipmunk or a hamster. They use those to hoard all of their food, especially when they're out sort of foraging. They collect all of that food and then they bring it back to their underground burrow. So the
Okay,
young
so their
rats
pouches are not okay. All right.
but the young rats are especially cute because I feel like those pouches are super disproportional to their body size. We even have a thing called Full Cheek Friday because the rats get the weekend off just like we do. So on Friday, we give them this huge feast to eat, and it's like a little mini celebration, and they just stuff their cheeks with all of the food. So Fridays around here are Full Cheek Fridays.
Oh my gosh, I feel kind of like that's what happens at our house when my kids come home as well. I'll pass that on. This weekend, when we're recording this, is the 4th of July weekend in the United States, and we will be having Full Cheek Fridays this week. That's for sure. Okay, the next really technical thing that I want people to understand is that the word using the words hero rats of APOPO. This word hero is not just some understatement moniker. It is this is serious stuff. Tell us some of the new work, for instance, that you're doing.
Yeah, so we are training rats to find people who have been trapped inside collapsed buildings following natural disasters like earthquakes. So we have 6 rats who were recently stationed in Turkey to work alongside our program partner there, who is a volunteer search and rescue organization. And we're going to be doing some operational trials with our rats. So the way that we envision it working is that the rats will be deployed from the surface of the collapsed building, and they will go down inside all of those layers of the rubble, systematically searching for any person that's trapped inside there. Now, of course, the rat alone can't do this work. How's he going to tell us when he's found someone? So this gets to the rat backpack that you mentioned. We have made custom little technology-enabled backpacks that the rats carry. And when they find someone trapped inside the rubble, the rat can trigger that backpack to turn on so that we have live stream audio and video and two-way communication with the trapped victim. It also has a position sensor on that backpack so that it can tell the rescue crews where to go to find that person. We can maybe better assess what sort of need that person has for medical attentions. And then we can call the rat back. So just in case, there's an aftershock with an earthquake or whatever, the building's unstable, or we've lost communication feed, we just call the rat back, they return to us, and then we have an SD card that has all of that information on it. So we can pop it into the computer and see what the rat saw and have that conversation with the victim that's trapped.
Wow. Okay. So many things. One of the things that I've always been curious about, and I wonder if the rats affect this part of the equation, is that, okay, so a building has collapsed, and Turkey, people may know, is especially prone to seismic activities. So a building collapses, it's in rubbles. You can't just launch into the edges of that rubble pile with a backhoe, because you don't know if there's somebody right there 6 feet in.
Exactly.
Or 50 feet in or whatever. Do the rats, I could imagine the rats help you assess an area so that you can start in and then go to the next and the next, right?
Exactly. So we're actually imagining that the rats can help in lots of different ways in this sort of scenario. So for one, they can clear an area to tell us that there is not anybody here, which is helpful for the rescue crews to now start moving further into that rubble and debris. They can also tell us sort of the underlying debris structure because they have that backpack on with the video stream. So that can tell the rescue crews where it is or is not safe to sort of drill or to move like a load-bearing section there. And then, of course, the big thing is that they are, not just sort of randomly looking around in this chaotic scene, but they are systematically looking for people. So hopefully we can more efficiently or quickly find someone who's trapped and get them out to safety.
And then there's the magic of something that you said. It's two-way communication.
Yeah, so on the backpack, there's also a microphone and a speaker, so we can actually speak real time with that victim if they're conscious, of course.
I can't even imagine that.
I mean, one thing that we are aware of, though, is you've mentioned a few times, is not everyone loves rats the way that we do. I wish that everyone appreciated and respected them as much as I do. They really are a really phenomenal creature and species that deserves much more respect than we give them typically. But we don't want to create some additional trauma for someone who has already gone through a really horrible experience. So one thing that we have looked at is having the backpack make an announcement that says, I'm a rescue rat. I'm here to help you. So that you're not traumatized thinking that you're, hallucinating that there's this giant rat coming near you where you're trapped.
Wow. You're so right on that. I don't know. This is just so much wonder in this story. So have you piloted this somewhere? Are you actually using it somewhere? Where are you at in this particular process?
We have just begun the pilot process in Turkey. So we're going to be working together with a partner there to do some operational trials, including on their training grounds where they train the rescue crews how to access those debris sites. And then we're looking, hopefully, to have national accreditation within the next year so that we'll be on standby if and when disaster strikes.
Wow, I just can't even believe that. And then there's this other one that just blows me away. Talk to us about the Minefields to Ricefields project, because that just blows me away. And that's in a whole nother part of the world.
That's right. So the Minefields to Ricefields project is something that we've recently launched in Cambodia. So Cambodia is one of the most heavily mined countries in the world, and it also has one of the highest incidents of accidents. So there's the highest per capita amputees in Cambodia and the most deaths and accidents from landmines annually happening there. So we have a very large team of rats working in 3 different provinces in Cambodia, in Siem Reap, Privihir, and Battambang regions there. And the rats are perfectly safe searching. I want to just keep emphasizing that they're giant, but they're too light to detonate landmines, so they're perfectly safe doing this work. But there's this whole other barrier to sort of development. So as you mentioned, the minefields are there, which is blocking access to that land for agriculture, transportation, schools, whatever. But then once you clear those mines out of there, you then are left with this land that is not necessarily the best for development. And all too often we saw, in our experience across different countries, like in Mozambique, is that the minefield would be cleared and then it would just be left there sort of abandoned. So the Minefields to Ricefields project is actually partnering with local farmers, providing them with organic seeds and with training on how to develop that land and grow organic crops, and then also connecting them to the markets. So it's really spearhead, moving further ahead that development of that land. It's not just leaving it like, okay, well then here's your land, do it, but really helping in that process.
Wow. And that is a typical tripping up point for a lot of nonprofit organizations. They go in, they address a thing, and then they forget about the surrounding issues that would actually make that the most impactful. I was once very much educated by a guy who did all his work, wonderful article we wrote for the Goodness Exchange. Now, so people know, the Goodness Exchange is the mothership website of this podcast. And there are thousands of articles about people like Dr. Fast and the organization but of every sort, who are doing good in the world. So if you appreciate reading about things like this, go to the Goodness Exchange. You're going to find that. We did this article on, this guy runs a school in Haiti, and they have the most incredible return rate. 92% of their kids graduate and go all over the world to high school, and 92% actually come back after college, which is just an unheard of rate, because most people who get out of Haiti, who are lucky enough to get out, don't come back. But they've really instilled a really good. I'll put a link to that article in the show notes. They've instilled a really good service to their country ethos. Okay, so this guy gave me this lecture about a company who had come in, a good intention, and planted like 1 million trees, because Haiti's very famous for its mudslides. So they planted all these 1 million trees, and of course they were dead. All of them were gone in 2 years, as soon as they got as big as my wrist. So what that company never did was ask why people are cutting down all the trees. Well, it turns out that 90% of the mothers in that country do not have access to clean water for their children. So they cut down every living tree to make charcoal. They actually make charcoal in the streets, and out of just that size small tree, so that they can boil water and give their kids clean water. Well, that's the example of the goodwill of many nonprofits, but just not looking at the bigger picture. So that makes me, with the story you just told, makes me exceedingly happy again of the way APOPO looks at the big picture in the work that they do. Do you have any other good examples of that?
Well, even on the TB side, I think we're always concerned with how is it that we actually effectively have impact, that, we're not just serving one piece of the challenge. So our TB detection rats, maybe they're helping with the diagnostics, but it doesn't do any good if that person doesn't return back to the clinic and doesn't follow through with their treatment. So we've been partnering with local health officers who are community health agents. They are actually former TB patients themselves, and they go out into the community and raise awareness about TB to try and kind of fight that stigma that comes with a TB diagnosis and help follow up to make sure that the patients are continuing with their treatment. They'll even provide transportation to the clinic to get their medication if it's needed. So really making sure that it's not just ending with, we found a patient, but making sure that that patient gets the care that they need.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, let's go back to talking about some individual rats because fun fact for everyone, my husband and I have been wildlife rehabbers our whole life. We are the ones in Vermont that were licensed to take injured and orphaned moose. So I've raised 4 baby moose in my lifetime.
That's
Is that hilarious?
amazing.
Did you just find that? Am I just telling you that now?
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah, we even had the rabies vaccine because we took a lot of the carnivores that people would have to worry about rabies from. We were raising all kinds of carnivores and things when our kids were little, and that was a pretty wild life. But I have this interest in wildlife that's big, and one thing I noticed, and you can back me up on this or go the other direction. Once you get to know animals, they all have different personalities. Like this talk about sentient beings and animals with self-awareness and stuff, it goes just like that over my head because every raccoon I ever raised was a different little soul. Every moose, every fawn. God, we must have raised 100 fawns in over the course of 15 years. They were all had a different little personality. Tell us more about a couple others. Like we forgot to mention Ronin's big global award.
Yeah, Ronan was always a very diligent worker. So the opposite of Tamasha. Tamasha does her happy dance and she's very, lighthearted, if you can say, for a rat. Ronan was just diligent. He was very always serious. If a rat can be serious, I would call Ronan serious, but very he had this way of walking when he was searching the minefields that was almost like he was marching, like taking this job so very seriously. And he is now deployed in Cambodia. He's still working. He's a little over 5 years old now. But earlier this year, he actually was awarded the Guinness Book of World Record for the rat who has found the most landmines. So it's kind of a niche category, but in his career, he's found 124 landmines, and he's helped clear over 218,000 square meters of former minefields in Cambodia. But
Imagine the
as
children that aren't amputees. Imagine the pets that survived. Imagine the crops that are filling people's bellies from that one rat.
And as you introduced him as sort of this personalities as well, I think that's a perfect example of Ronan was really made to go into the mine action sector. He gets along quite well with those sort of ex-military guys, he's all business. But on the other side, Tamasha maybe would not be a perfect landmine detection rat screwing around and doing her little happy dance before she does such
How do
serious
you
work.
decide?
We
How do
let
you
the rats
decide?
tell us. We let the rats
Okay.
tell us. So when they're very, very young, it's very difficult to see those individual differences. So we'll assign them sort of randomly to a training program, and then we just watch how they're coming along with it. About a year ago, we had some orphaned rats that were brought to us from a good citizen in the community who had, kind of taken an interest in this mom that was going in and out of the den, and then was very concerned because the mom hadn't came back for a couple, 3 days. So most likely ran into a predator or something. But this good Samaritan was quite concerned for the baby rats inside the den. So he pulled them all out and brought them to us. Their eyes weren't even open yet, so they were absolutely dependent on their mother, who was, nowhere to be found. So this was right around the end of the year, so around, Christmas, Hanukkah holidays. So I ended up taking these 6 little orphan pups home to my house, and my son helped me bottle feed them. And as their eyes opened, it was the first thing that they saw was my son and myself, caring for them. So he got to name 3 of them. So we now have a Super Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach landmine detection rats.
Oh my gosh. So in the whole of the program, how many countries are you in now? It sounds like 10 or 12.
Oh, so we also have dogs. So we have landmine detection dogs that are doing work there. So excluding the dogs, we have rats in Tanzania, Ethiopia, Cambodia, Angola, and Azerbaijan. So 5 countries with rats.
And are we talking about like 30 rats? Are we talking about 300? How many rats have been trained to be helpful?
As of right this moment, I actually just had to do some quarterly reporting. I know that I have 284 rats that are either in our breeding program, they're deployed to these operational programs, they're still in training to go and support those programs or expansion and scale to other countries. We're opening a new program in the northern area of Tanzania, where we'll be partnering with other health facilities there to help with TB detection. Or they're in one of these research projects like search and rescue or detection of illegally smuggled wildlife products. But again, back to the personality thing, sometimes you get a rat who is just super content to be around people and not really motivated to play the puzzle game to get, sniff out something for treats. So we found a new career for those rats, and they're serving as ambassadors. So we have ambassador rats that are now stationed at zoos in the US, where you can go and you can meet and greet these rats, learn more about them, and they'll do simple demonstrations about what does it look like for a rat to sniff out a landmine. What is it? How does the rat work to sniff out a TB in a patient sample? Or how is it that a rat could screen a passenger's luggage or cargo? What does that even look like? And so these rats are doing really important work in raising awareness about the species and these sorts of challenges around the world.
I think that that's just like another like extension of this, not just going in and thinking you're solving a problem and then walking out. This is like finding every direction that you can to just build and build and build. And I guess that makes me ask, and I'm not going to get into politics. People who listen to this podcast know we don't go there, but we have to say, and we have to remind people that the chaos in the United States probably has affected what's going on. Like, how does when there's chaos, for that matter, in any of these countries, when there's political chaos, what happens? But start with what's happened since the United States has gone into our chaotic phase we're in right now.
Well, I think the most obvious effect that it's had on us and for some of our partners that we've worked with globally has been the funding cuts. So those, were not anticipated. They came in very quickly. There wasn't a lot of advance notice, and it left a lot of programs, really struggling to survive. We had to close one of our programs in Zimbabwe, where we were doing landmine detection there along a wildlife corridor. Our wildlife detection project actually was also impacted because it had received support from USAID. And when that funding was halted, we were left kind of, wondering how it is that the project that's come so far, how would we be able to keep it afloat and moving forward still?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just can say right now, I'm sure if people have been touched by this interview so far, and we have still more to come. So many little things I wanted to share with people. they can donate, right? Does your website take donations and you can become a sustaining donor and all that stuff?
Absolutely. And I think especially at this time, with the global economy and situation as it is, we really rely heavily on that public support to keep our activities going. So you can do a one-off donation, but you can also choose to sponsor one of our rats. We call it an adoption program. And if you could do a one, an annual donation, or you can do a monthly donation recurring. And what you get for that is a certificate that's personalized and customized, but you get monthly updates about what it is your rat is doing. So you'll find out, how many patients has Tamasha sniffed out this last month with your support.
Wow. Okay. Because this is important. This isn't just a flash in the pan, folks. This is changing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, maybe more over the scope of time. There's no knowing how many people's lives will be changed because of this, all that you're doing and all that you're learning and the expansion.
Yeah, I mean, to date, our rats, for TB detection, our rats have helped identify 32,500 patients that had otherwise missed diagnosis. So it works. It absolutely works. And that's 32,000 people that were able to get life-saving treatment and return back to work or school, have full recovery. I mean, on the landmine side, they have, to date, our rats have found 169,000 explosive remnants of war. They've cleared an area 122 million square meters.
And these are people's backyards. These are people's, the field next to the soccer field that the kids are playing in. And maybe they only found the soccer field was safe because somebody had the nerve to walk through it or whatever. I mean, these are real problems in real places with people's lives that are just like us. That's what I've learned in interviewing folks all over the world is everybody kind of wants the same thing. They just want a better life for their children. They want to know, that their kids are going to have food and water on the table at night. On and on we could go, but this is just beautiful stuff. Okay. Now, for those people that just can't get over the rat thing, you're doing a dog thing too. Like, talk to us about Ukraine and the hero dogs.
Yeah, so Ukraine is one of our biggest projects right now for our dogs. We started training hero dogs for landmine detection. I guess it was in 2018 or thereabouts. And we quickly realized that these dogs are capable of clearing the area in a bit different way. So rather than coming in with the machinery to clear out all of this overgrown brush, and then using a metal detector to make safe lanes, and then asking the dog to sniff and search out the mines in between, what we ask our dogs to do is to just go into this area that's suspected to be hazardous. Dogs are obedient. They want to work with their master. And these are high drive dogs. They're really excited to get out there and just kind of cut through the brush. And the whole time they're searching for landmines. So it's a process called technical survey. So you have this area where you think there might be mines. So for instance, in Ukraine, there's some areas that are believed to contain mines. So nobody's going there, but we don't know for certain if there actually are mines. So the dogs can go in, kind of working somewhat independently with a handler that's standing back in a safe zone, and kind of survey that area to see, are there explosives present or not.
And do we have to worry about them stepping on a landmine and getting blown up? All that training, of course, a life of a dog is super important, being lost, but also all that training going down the tubes.
It's a very, very good point. So, the dogs actually could trigger a mine if they were to, put all of their weight in that same area. But what we've trained our dogs to do is to sit about a meter before they get to the mine. So that's how they tell us that they found something. So they never actually reach the danger.
Okay. But their noses are that powerful. They can smell it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. And of course, when people support that, if we had a nice conversation Dr. Fast and I before we started, because we caught up and kind of made friends 3 years ago when we first interviewed. So we did have a nice little catch up conversation. And, funding is what you need. So if any of this touches your heart, please support this group. They're incredible.
But
Tell me more about any.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't
tell
mean
me
to
more.
interrupt, but you're absolutely right. Anybody could also support our work by supporting or adopting a hero dog as well. So if rats are not
Okay.
your thing, you can sponsor one of the dogs. But I
Okay.
also want to just quickly say that we have a brand new rat up for adoption or sponsorship. The rat's
Okay.
name is Jane Goodall, and Jane
Oh.
Goodall herself named the rat when she came to visit. So Jane Goodall the rat is now in training to detect illegally smuggled wildlife products. So this is a different sort of life-saving mission where it's saving the biodiversity of our planet and fellow
Right.
wild animals.
You just gave me goosebumps for about the 10th time. Jane Goodall she's my hero. I just have to show you. This is over my desk. I have her on my fridge. I love Jane Goodall for what she represents in the world of progress and communication. She didn't lock herself to lab doors to free the chimps. Before Jane Goodall, we were locking chimpanzees who have almost the intellect of human children. We were locking them in 4x4 cages. Then Jane Goodall came along and helped educate the science world that these were about the emotional lives of chimpanzees, a bottom line. And all of a sudden, people just logically changed what they thought was appropriate as far as the science and institutional way that we were treating these creatures. And so she was like the the woman with the shield and the sword in the most kindest and respectful way. And I love thought leaders that move the needle with respect and kindness. So that's so great. And I'm dying to interview Jane Goodall. So if you have any context, we can talk about that after the interview. As we wrap up, we were about to wrap up. There's a few just odds and ends. Talk to us about the training. I think the last interview that we had, you were talking about a woman that applied for the job as a trainer and rats kind of repelled her, but then she sort of got it. And talk to us tell us a little bit about what the training and employing local folks or folks that may not think that, rats are something that they can touch and love and interact with. Talk to us a little bit about that world.
Yeah, I think everyone when they join our team is, a little reluctant or hesitant about the rats, not really sure what to get into it, or what it's going to be like to work with them. I think more people are learning about the work that we do and hearing the term hero rat, so there's some curiosity there. But most people, when they first meet that rat, especially if it's a visitor, and we say, "Do you want your picture taken with the rat? We'll put it on your shoulder." They're excited at first, and then it's like, I don't know if I want this rat on my shoulder. But you watch that change, especially, working with the rats. I think, rats are like most animals and like most people. They just want to have their basic needs met. They want to have some fun and some enrichment, and they want to be able to, be curious and explore things. They want to feel safe and secure. And you have these individual differences like we talked about. So the team that we've built here in Tanzania, there's not really a pet culture in a lot of places where we work. So there's a lot of, foundational sort of respect for other animals that we kind of work on. And it's amazing to see now that the team themselves have came up with new ways that they can make toys for the rats. So we have this area with bamboo growing nearby my office, and they were getting kind of long and hanging over towards a power pole, and they said, "We got to cut these down anyway. Let's turn it into toys for the rats." And they're making ramps, and drilling holes as little foraging tools. And now it's become a mainstay that every couple of weeks we have a whole team that's dedicated to making rat toys.
Oh my gosh. And that's back to this whole thing about these creatures being other beings on the earth that we can respect, even collaborate with. Like, I think it makes the distance between me and a rat feel even shorter by you just telling me that one little story.
Well, I think collaboration is key. The rat that we talked about for search and rescue can't do that job on its own. The rescue team needs the help of the rat, but the rat needs the help of the technology with the backpack. But that technology by itself wouldn't be able to do it either. It really is collaboration.
Mm. Now, talk to me a little bit about the lifespan of these rats, just so people get some kind of idea. I have no idea. 5, 6 years, 12? Where are we at?
The average lifespan is 8, but we've
Okay.
had at least 2 rats now live to be 12 years old in our
Okay.
care. So they work right up until the point where they kind of lose some interest or start to slow down. And then we have a retirement area where the rats get to
Oh,
retire to.
oh, that's lovely. Even more. Okay. So, just hitting a few more high points before we wrap up. Folks that are interested in endangered wildlife and just wildlife in general and the ecodiversity of our planet, you're becoming involved in that because this wildlife trafficking issue.
That's right. So we have rats that are in training to be stationed at sort of major seaports or airports where large volumes of wildlife material is often trafficked. And so what we're really targeting is also endangered species. So we're looking at trying to save, those animals that are threatened in the wild, that are being poached and trafficked in large volumes. So the rats are kind of uniquely poised to help out here because of their small size. So if you have this huge shipping container just stuffed full of things, it's hard to find if something's hidden in there. I mean, that's kind of what the smuggling profession is getting it in there and getting it concealed. So we can lift our rats up to the air vent so the rat can smell the contents of that container from the outside. And then if the rat says there's something in here that's suspicious, if we get the, authorization to open up that container, we don't have to unpack all of that because of the rat's small size and how well it can navigate those tight areas. We can just send the rat in. And if he's got a little backpack on, just like for search and rescue, we can see what the rat is sniffing when it indicates to us by pulling a little ball on its harness that it's found some illicit material inside.
Oh my gosh. This thing is just mind blowing to me. The potential here, the missed potential, that we weren't onto this 50 years ago, or that you're having any struggle funding this is something we can do something about. So I'm going to encourage people to hit the website. What can people do next? What do you suggest if they're fired up about this interview?
I think get involved. So either get involved in your local community because there's things going on all around you where you can actively make a difference. Certainly, if you are wanting to support APOPO, the biggest way is with the donation through our website because that can be funneled to all of our different programs and activities. Or you can even specify if you want your support to go to wildlife detection or to TB detection. But also, we collaborate. That's part of what APOPO does. We innovate and we collaborate. So maybe you have a unique skill set, like, you have a way of working with large data sets and you would like to volunteer some time to help us out. Reach out and we would be happy to talk.
I think that last little bit that you mentioned is really something important. What I've noticed is that my husband and I just retired from being dentists for 35 years. And I'm probably going to do this for the rest of my life till I just get I'm just drooling at the mic here because I just think it's what I'm uniquely built to do is shine a light on folks like you. But there's a lot of folks who retire and want to be productive and want to do something of purpose and meaning. And they might have skills that you guys could use even from afar. I think I really want to encourage people to look at the APOPO website. I'm looking at it right now on another screen. Starts right out with support us, find out, like they're going to, oh my gosh, the picture, the images here. I'm going to really recommend people go to the APOPO website. It's beautiful. There's read more about everything, every single thing that she and I just talked about. So I'd encourage people to go there. And then of course there's a contact us. And then there's the support and donate. So, just head to the APOPO website and you're going to find out what they do, who they are, about the dogs, the rats, wait, what's Hero Trees?
So Hero Trees is part of that Minefields to Ricefields project. So that there's lots of different components with that, including this really new wild way called syntropic agroforestry of like basically planting food forests. But it's all connected to protecting people and our planet, and what do we do with this land that we've been granted.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So what I will recommend people do, I just had a quick search while you're explaining that of your website. There is a contact us, send an email. If you've got a skill, if you want to do more, if you have contact with a corporation that might be a good corporate donor, I once heard about an organization. We wrote an article about it. I think it was UPS that supported drones that delivered life-saving medicines in some part of Africa. I mean, that was a nice dovetail for a delivery corporation like UPS and what they were doing in another part of the world. And I'm sure there'll be some clever person who's listening to this interview who will think, well, my sister-in-law runs this corporation and they would be the perfect sponsors of APOPO. I don't know. I think there's a world where corporations can make us feel lucky to have them in our lives when they support something as innovative and cost-saving and life-touching as what you guys are doing. Okay, so go to APOPO. APOPO is all you have to type in. It'll pop right up, and it's a beautiful website. Okay, to wrap up here, I always ask folks if there was one thing that you really wish people knew. Like, my life has taught me, my life doing the Goodness Exchange and the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast has taught me that your click is a vote. Every time we click on something on the internet, we are essentially voting for it. So if we just stop clicking on the negativity and the noise, content producers are going to stop producing it. So that's my little, what I really wish people knew. Your click is a vote. Talk to me about what you really wish people knew. What has your life journey and this work taught you?
I guess I really wish that people understood the value of an open mind. So when we are closed-minded about what's possible or the potential or what we're capable of, we really limit ourselves to those beliefs. But if we keep our mind open, then comes creativity, then comes innovation, then comes, collaboration in creative ways, then comes synergies. And it's really just about this openness and not falling into this trap of believing that we already know all the answers and that it's all of this sort of limited stuff. There's something positive we can do every single day that will make a difference. And to just, keep that open mind, keep looking for what is the positivity you can bring today. And it can lead to big things.
Mm-hmm. And I would add, keep asking questions because, there's so many people who may not choose this episode to listen to because they assume that rats are just creepy, terrible creatures. And this episode really represents the big picture on staying open, if you ask me. Once you're open to something, you're open to learning about all that's possible, and then a whole landscape opens up in front of you.
Yeah, and a willingness to learn as well, right? If we're all willing to learn, imagine how much greater this whole world would be if we were all open to learning and willing to learn from one another.
Hmm. I think that's going to be my little takeaway for the day. I'm going to try maybe the rest of the week. My kids are all going to be home for, we talked about, this is the 4th of July weekend in 2025. And they always bring up things. I've got, 20 somethings, 3 kids age 25 to 32. And they always bring stuff up that's happening in the world that I kind of like get the creeps from, or that I have some opinions in here about that are wrong, almost always wrong. And if I stay open, they say the damnedest things. They always open my heart and open my mind to what's possible. And that's, I think, what APOPO reminds me of, is all the untapped potential in the world and all the goodness that can come of us, progressing from one openness to asking a new question, a better question, a better question. I'm sure, to wrap up, isn't that how you've come upon one project after another with these rats? Is that one project causes you to say, well, couldn't they do this then?
That's exactly it. That's exactly how, this sort of momentum gets going. And we learned, we could train the rats to do the sort of wildlife detection. It's still in development, but based on how that was working, we said, well, then couldn't we help with search and rescue? Or, I mentioned that we were sniffing out some different contamination in the soil. Then there's been some discussion about, could we sniff out leakages in safe drinking water? So as that pipe transmission line is leaking and all that safe drinking water is being lost, could the rats maybe help with that, since we know they can detect things in the soil like landmines and other things. So yeah, it really is just following where that goes and staying open.
Okay, well, that's what we want to leave people on. Thank you so much, Dr. Cindy Fast. Check out the APOPO website. Stay open. I hope the great ideas and the wonder that we just exposed you to will carry you through your week. And we'll see you in a few more weeks with another interview with a great thought leader. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Dr. Linda.